The woman at the front desk smiled the way people do when they know they're about to ruin your evening and hope good posture will soften the blow. "I'm so sorry," she said, tapping at her screen. "It looks like there was a system error with your reservation." That sentence meant nothing good. I glanced at Lauren beside me. She was standing there in a navy sweater, airport tired, one hand hooked through the strap of her carry-on, looking calm in a way that immediately made me suspicious. "What kind of error?" I asked. The clerk gave me a sympathetic smile. "The booking only held one room," and she clicked once more. "It's a king." I blinked. "One room." "Yes, sir." "One bed." "Yes, sir." Lauren let out one breath through her nose and looked up at the ceiling like the universe had finally gotten bored and chosen violence. That was how our weekend in Charleston started. My name's Ethan Parker, and Lauren Hale had been my best friend for almost 7 years. We met at a mutual friend's 4th of July party because I was manning the grill badly, and she walked up, took the tongs out of my hand, and said, "You're flipping these burgers like they insulted your family." I told her I respected aggressive cooking. She said, "Good, then stay out of my way." That was Lauren. Funny, direct, and impossible to intimidate. The kind of woman who could make a room feel more honest just by walking into it. Somewhere between that cookout and the next 7 years, she became the person I called first when something mattered. Good stuff, bad stuff, flat tire stuff, family emergency stuff. The problem was that people noticed. They always do. My sister once watched Lauren steal fries off my plate, take my hoodie without asking, and tell me I looked emotionally overcommitted to that haircut, then said, "You two either need to date or stop behaving like a long-married couple in a toothpaste commercial." We laughed. That was our specialty, laughing right at the thing neither of us wanted examined too closely. This trip was supposed to be easy. Lauren's younger brother was getting engaged, and the party was happening at her aunt's place just outside Charleston. She'd asked me to come because, in her words, "My family likes you, and you're very good at looking calm when I want to fake stability." I told her that sounded less like an invitation and more like unpaid emotional labor. She said, "Exactly." So we flew out Friday afternoon, got delayed in Atlanta for 3 miserable hours, landed late, drove straight to the hotel, and walked into the kind of lobby that smelled like lemon polish and expensive disappointment. One room, one king bed. The clerk was still apologizing. "We're fully booked because of a wedding party and a medical conference," she said. "There's no way to move you until tomorrow." I turned to Lauren. "Tell me you at least booked 2 queens." She looked at me. "I booked 2 queens." The clerk glanced back at the screen. "Actually, ma'am, the reservation notes say 1 king preferred." I looked at Lauren again. She frowned. "No, they don't." Something in her voice was off. Not panicked, just too measured. The clerk quickly added, "It may have been changed during the sync issue. I'm really sorry." Lauren gave her a polite smile that meant she was choosing not to commit a crime in public. "It's fine." It was not fine. 5 minutes later, we were in the elevator with one key card, one overnight bag each, and enough awkwardness to power the building. Lauren leaned back against the mirrored wall. "We'll survive one night." That's optimistic. It's practical. I was hoping for separate rooms and moral clarity. You have neither. Adapt. Despite myself, I smiled. That was the thing with Lauren. Even in bad situations, she could tilt the room half an inch away from disaster just by sounding unimpressed by it. The room itself was worse than I expected. Beautiful, of course, which felt personal. Big king bed, white duvet, one upholstered chair by the window, no couch, no useful horizontal alternative for a man trying very hard not to think about his best friend in a hotel room with one bed and low amber lighting. Lauren set her bag down and took in the scene. "Well," that's not a reassuring use of that word. "Nothing about this is reassuring." I dropped my duffel by the dresser and pulled out my phone, more for something to do than because I expected help. And that was when the email came through. "Charleston Harbor Inn, reservation confirmation updated." I opened it without thinking, then I stopped breathing for a second, because under the room details in plain black text it said, "Guest request confirmed, 1 king bed updated by Lauren Hale." I looked up. Lauren was standing by the window, back half turned to me, unzipping her bag like nothing had happened. And suddenly I didn't care about the system error at all, because it hadn't been one. I looked at the screen again, then at Lauren, then back at the screen, because sometimes your brain hopes a sentence will rearrange itself into something less life-altering if you give it a second chance. It didn't. Updated by Lauren Hale. I cleared my throat. Hey, Lauren glanced over. That sounds ominous. Did you change the reservation? She froze, not dramatically, just enough. Then she straightened slowly, one hand still on the zipper of her bag. What? The room. I held up my phone. The confirmation says the One King was updated by you. For 1 second, she looked exactly like a woman deciding between 3 lies and one terrible truth. Then she said, "That feels invasive." That is a very interesting response. Lauren shut her eyes briefly. I was trying to avoid this conversation until at least tomorrow. So that is a yes. She opened her eyes and looked at me properly. It is a yes. The room changed, not in some cinematic, instant fireworks way. More like the floor shifted half an inch and everything in it had to relearn balance. I set my phone down on the dresser. Why? Lauren let out one short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You're really going to make me do this standing up next to a complimentary robe? Yes. That feels rude. That feels like the only sane response currently available to me. She looked down at the carpet, then back at me. I changed it at the airport. Why? I heard you ask the gate agent if we could still switch flights and skip the party. That stopped me. Because I had said that. Half joking, half not. The kind of sentence you toss into a bad travel day because it's easier than admitting you're nervous about something real. I wasn't serious, I said. I know. Lauren crossed her arms. That wasn't the point. Then what was? She held my gaze for one long second. Then she said, I was tired of giving us easy exits. That landed hard. I sat down on the chair by the window because suddenly standing felt too dramatic. Lauren stayed where she was, backlit by the lamp, still in that navy sweater, still too calm for a woman who had apparently engineered a one-bed hotel room with her best friend and then hoped the universe would carry the rest. You booked one bed, I said slowly. Yes. On purpose. Yes. For what exactly? That was when she finally lost a little of the calm. Not much. Just enough for the truth to show through it. For one night where we couldn't keep pretending we're just accidentally close, she said. For one night where neither of us could disappear into another room, or another joke, or another we'll talk later that never happens. I stared at her. Lauren laughed once, short and embarrassed and more honest than anything else she'd said yet. Wow, that sounds worse out loud. No, I said quietly. It sounds very on purpose. She looked at me, and now there was no mistaking it. She was nervous. Lauren Hale. Nervous. That alone made my heartbeat behave unprofessionally. I know how this looks, she said. I'm not sure I do. She sat on the edge of the bed then, like she needed something solid under her to finish this. It looks, she said, choosing each word carefully, like I got tired of waiting for life to hand us a cleaner moment. There it was. Not a joke, not a trap, not an accident, a decision. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Lauren. Yeah? If you wanted to talk, you could have just talked. She smiled faintly. And you could have just noticed. Fair. Painfully fair. Because the truth was, I had noticed 100 things. The way she leaned on me first when she was tired. The way every date I went on felt slightly off because it ended with me, wanting to tell Lauren about it. The way my family already treated her like she was built into my life. I had noticed, I just hadn't named it. You really thought one bed would fix that? I asked. No. She looked down at her hands. I thought one bed might make it harder to lie. That was the best answer she could have given. Because it was honest. And because it scared me in exactly the same place I'd been keeping my own version of this. I stood. Lauren looked up at me, alert now, like she was bracing for me to tell her she'd made a huge mistake. Instead, I walked to the mini fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, handed it to her, and said, Okay, She blinked. Okay? Okay means I'm trying very hard not to say the most reckless thing first. That changed her face, softened it. What's the reckless thing? She asked. I looked at her for a long second, then I said that I stopped thinking of you as just my best friend a while ago. I just never knew what to do with that information. Lauren went very still. Then, in a voice quieter than anything she'd used tonight, she said, well, that's inconveniently mutual. And just like that, the bed stopped being the problem. Because now the real problem was everything it meant. For a second, neither of us moved. Lauren was still sitting on the edge of the bed with the water bottle in one hand, looking at me like the room had tilted, and she was trying to decide whether to trust the floor. That, she said softly, is a very unfair thing to say while I'm the one who booked the psychological warfare bed. I laughed once under my breath. You really did choose the most aggressive possible method. I know. And if I'd panicked? I considered that. That's reassuring. It's not meant to be. Despite everything, I smiled. That helped. A little. The room didn't feel less charged, but it felt less like it might explode if either of us breathed wrong. Lauren twisted the cap on the water bottle and said, I was not trying to trap you. I know. No, really. I wasn't trying to force some grand confession. She looked down at the label. I just got tired of how easy we made it for ourselves to stay almost something forever. That landed right where it should have. Because that was exactly what we'd been doing. Not denying it. Not fully. Just endlessly rerouting every real moment into something safer. A joke. A distraction. Another week. Another month. Another year. I leaned back against the dresser and looked at her. Do you know when I first realized this wasn't normal? Lauren's mouth curved faintly. I'm scared. But yes. My sister's Christmas party last year. That's not the answer I expected. You were in my kitchen yelling at my brother because he bought pre-made guacamole and called it homemade. That was a moral issue. I know, but then you turned around, handed me a beer without asking what I wanted, and started telling me a story about your boss like you already lived there. Lauren stared at me for a second. That was the moment? No. I smiled a little. The moment was when my aunt asked how long we'd been together, and instead of correcting her, I almost answered. That got her. A real laugh. Quiet, warm, dangerous. Then she looked at me differently, more openly. I think mine was the flu, she said. I frowned. The flu? You had a fever of 103 and were trying to insist you were basically fine. That sounds accurate. You texted me that because you needed soup recommendations. I did not. You did. And when I got to your apartment, you were wrapped in 2 blankets arguing with your microwave. I smiled despite myself. It was a bad machine. It was a normal machine. You were delirious. Lauren's eyes softened. And I remember standing there with grocery bags in both hands thinking, this is not how I show up for men I only care about in a casual, healthy, best friend way. That one got me quiet. Because I remembered that day too. Her in my kitchen making soup like she owned the place. Me half conscious on the couch. The embarrassing relief of waking up and realizing she was still there. That should have told us something, I said. It did, Lauren replied. We just did nothing useful with it. Fair. I pushed away from the dresser and took a few slow steps toward the bed. Not enough to crowd her. Just enough that the distance stopped feeling like a third person in the room. So, what happens now? I asked. Lauren looked up at me. You tell me. That seems suspicious. That's because I'm scared to choose the wrong speed. I nodded once. That at least I understood. The truth was, I wanted to kiss her. Badly. But I also wanted something harder than that. I wanted the version of this we could still respect in the morning, so I said, now we stop lying, but we don't do anything tonight just because the hotel ran out of exit routes. Lauren's face changed at that. Not disappointment. Relief. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Okay means I'd rather start this right than fast. That made something in my chest settle. I sat beside her on the bed, leaving a careful 6 inches between us. Lauren looked down at the space, then at me. That is a very dramatic amount of restraint. I'm trying to impress you with character. You already let me book one bed on purpose. Character's not really the issue. I laughed softly. Then the room went quiet again. Not awkward, just full. Lauren set the water on the nightstand and turned toward me slightly. Can I tell you the most humiliating part? Please don't say you rehearsed this. I didn't. But I did spend a full hour at the airport gift shop, pretending to compare chargers while trying to decide if changing the reservation made me unhinged. That is somehow very comforting. It shouldn't be. It is. She smiled. Then more softly, I really didn't know what you'd say. I held her gaze. Neither did I. That was the thing about it. The feeling wasn't new, the honesty was. And honesty changes the temperature of a room fast. Lauren's voice dropped. If I'd told you months ago, I know. No, let me finish. She took a breath. If I'd told you months ago, would you have said yes then too? I looked at her for one long second, then I answered the clean truth. Yes. Her breath caught. Not dramatically, just enough. I could have kissed her then. Maybe she would have let me. But before either of us moved, voices sounded in the hallway. Laughter, a door opening, her brother's fiancé saying something about missing earring backs and romantic hotel nonsense. Lauren shut her eyes. Of course, I smiled. Your family has excellent timing. My family is a federal offense. A knock hit our door once. Then her brother's voice came through the wood. Lauren, you two decent? She called back immediately. Well, define decent. He laughed from the hallway. Never mind. Breakfast at 9. Aunt Melissa wants pictures before the proposal brunch. Footsteps faded. Lauren looked at me. I looked at her. And suddenly the problem wasn't the bed anymore. It was that by 9 in the morning we were going to have to walk into her family's weekend carrying a truth neither of us knew how to hide anymore. Breakfast at 9 turned out to be the worst possible place to learn how visible we were. Not because we'd done anything dramatic, because we hadn't. That was the problem. Lauren and I walked into the dining room looking exactly like two people trying very hard to seem unchanged, which apparently made us look even more suspicious. Her aunt was arranging pastries like a battlefield tactician. Her brother was pretending not to notice us while noticing only us. Three cousins stopped talking for half a beat when we came in, and Lauren's grandmother, who had not missed a thing in 30 years according to family legend, took one look at us and said, "Oh, good. Somebody finally made a decision." Lauren nearly dropped the fruit bowl. I sat down beside her because at that point, choosing distance would have been a confession of its own. No one said anything directly after that. Which was worse. The whole table just carried this strange, delighted pressure, like they were all trying not to spook a rare bird. Her grandmother, meanwhile, was openly enjoying herself. She buttered toast, looked at Lauren, then at me and said, I always knew friendship was the first excuse. Lauren buried her face in her coffee. I should have helped. Instead, I laughed. That made Lauren kick me lightly under the table. Coward, she muttered. Incorrect, I whispered back. I'm adapting. That got the smallest smile out of her, which made the rest of the morning survivable. After breakfast came the engagement brunch, the photos, the speeches, the endless family gravity of it all. We stayed close, but not performatively. Not touching unless it made sense, not hiding either. The difference was subtle enough that a stranger might have missed it. Her family did not. By 3 that afternoon, Lauren's older cousin Jen cornered me near the drinks table and said, For what it's worth, this makes way more sense than the accountant. I blinked. That feels both supportive and invasive. That's family, she said, then walked off with a mimosa. Lauren found me 5 minutes later standing alone by the dock, looking out over the water and trying very hard not to smile like an idiot. Well? She asked. Well, what? Do you regret the bed strategy? I turned to look at her. The wind was pushing loose hair across her face. She was holding her shoes in one hand because apparently the weekend had fully abandoned dignity. And for the first time since she'd changed that reservation, there was no uncertainty in her expression, just nerves and hope, both honest. No, I said, I regret that it took a fake system error for us to stop being ridiculous. She laughed softly. That's fair. Then she stepped closer. Not all the way. Just enough. We're still not kissing for the first time because of a hotel room, she said. I smiled. You sound very certain. I am. She looked up at me. I'd like our first kiss to happen because we chose it, not because the furniture got dramatic. That was so specifically Lauren that it almost ruined me, so I did what any sane man would do. I took her hand and said, then choose it. She looked at me for one long second. Then she did. The kiss was quiet. No audience, no fireworks, just relief and warmth, and the strange, almost painful feeling of something finally clicking into the right place after years of sitting half an inch wrong. When we pulled back, she kept her forehead against mine and laughed under her breath. What? I asked. You really would have said yes months ago. Yes. That's deeply annoying. I know. We drove home Sunday afternoon in my car with the windows cracked and her hand resting in mine over the center console like it had been there before and we'd only just noticed. At one point, she looked over at me and said, next time I want a romantic breakthrough, remind me not to involve hotel logistics. I said, no, I think we should honor the origin story. She rolled her eyes. Absolutely not. 2 weeks later, we took our first real trip as something other than best friends who are making everyone uncomfortable. Same city, different hotel. When the woman at the front desk asked, 2 queens or 1 king? Lauren looked at me, smiled very slowly, and said, 1 king. This time on purpose, and with full consent from the emotionally repressed party. I laughed so hard the clerk laughed too. That was the thing in the end. Nothing about being with her felt sudden once it happened. It felt named, like our lives had already been leaning toward each other for years, and all we'd really done was stop calling that an accident. What would you have done if you found out your best friend had secretly changed the booking so there would only be one bed because she was tired of giving you both an easy way out? And have you ever been through something like that with someone you cared about for way too long before either of you admitted it? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.